today's session agenda includes introduction to Oracle GoldenGate, Oracle GoldenGate Classic and Microservices architecture, then troubleshooting issues and strategy and approach for troubleshooting GoldenGate issues, performance of Oracle GoldenGate, and then of course we'll be having regular question and answer session. So before I start, one request to you all, I want you to focus on this session for next 60 minutes. I assure you, you will be learning a lot, but I want your support in that. So I'll give you next 15 minutes. Just focus here. Whatever phone notifications you have to answer to, please answer those, and then we'll start the session. So next, I'm giving you 15 minutes if you have any notification to answer. So we are going to start now. Thank you. So Oracle GoldenGate, what and why? So GoldenGate is a CDC tool. Basically, GoldenGate was founded in 1995 and it wasn't Oracle GoldenGate when it was founded. It was a standalone company. In 2009, Oracle overtook it, and since then it is known as Oracle GoldenGate. So Oracle GoldenGate provides near real-time transactional data replication. So it provides real-time transactional data replication. That means as soon as transaction is committed on source, it gets replicated on the target data. Replication can be unidirectional or bidirectional or multidimensional. That means GoldenGate supports one-way replication or bidirectional replication. That means both the sites can be live, or multidimensional. That means multiple sites can be involved in Oracle GoldenGate replication. So replication can involve several sources and targets simultaneously and can be used for distributing data for backup, hot standby, auditing, reporting, warehousing, and load distribution as well. So the major advantage with GoldenGate is there can be multiple sources, single target. GoldenGate can replicate the data. Or there can be single source, multiple target. GoldenGate can replicate the data. There can be multiple sources, multiple targets. GoldenGate can replicate the data. So you can choose what type of configuration you want to choose. GoldenGate can do that. And that too in unidirectional, bidirectional, or whatever strategy or whatever requirement you have, of course, based on business requirement, you can choose that. So you can choose the replicated database for backup purpose or hot standby or auditing, reporting, warehousing, load distribution. So a lot of organizations, what they do is, because GoldenGate, they replicate the data using GoldenGate on the target database, and then they use GoldenGate for kind of reporting purpose, for reporting or running queries, etc. on that database. Now with GoldenGate, data can be replicated as is, or replicated data may be edited, transformed, split into different distributions, have metadata added or filtered. So one of the major advantage with GoldenGate is it supports data filtration as well as data transformation. That means if you want to filter out any transaction, you can do that with Oracle GoldenGate. Or if you do data transformation using Oracle GoldenGate, GoldenGate supports that. So by data transformation, we mean that, say, for example, on source, you have got salary and commission column on source. On target, you have only salary column. You want that addition of salary and commission on source should be replicated to salary column on target. You can do that. Or there are few more extra columns on target. You can perform various type of transformation in Oracle GoldenGate, along with data filtration, of course. So who should learn GoldenGate? Database administrator and app DBAs, PLSQL developers. Like GoldenGate nowadays is a niche technology, and you must be seeing like most of the job openings or almost all the job openings related to database administrator, they require this GoldenGate. So GoldenGate is one of the hot technology which requires which is must to have nowadays, right? So if you are working as PLSQL, and another advantage is like you can get better paid job, of course. If I have to compare it with USA, in US the average DBA salary is around $98,000 annually. But if you add GoldenGate to your resume, minimum you can add 30% up to 70% as well. And more than that, of course. So GoldenGate adds to your resume. Apart from that, it adds resume for selecting your resume or shortlisting your resume. It helps us. So cloud migration specialist. So nowadays there are so many cloud migrations going on. Organizations are moving from on-prem to cloud. So GoldenGate is one of the hottest technology which is used to do that for zero downtime purpose. So now why learn GoldenGate? GoldenGate is used by almost all top banks. So GoldenGate nowadays is used in mostly all domains. And primarily, if I talk about 3 to 4 years back, it was primarily being used by financial sectors and telecom domains. But now it is being used in almost all domains. So GoldenGate is used by large enterprises with big budget and so higher paid job. Today, employers expect DBAs developers to know more than one task, and GoldenGate is niche and in demand skill, of course. With cloud implementations, customer want real-time replication or zero-time downtime migration. So with this cloud, customers wants real-time replication or zero downtime upgradation and migration. So for that, again, GoldenGate is best bet. DBAs, developer, architects can set apart by upskill, stay ahead in career and better paid in Oracle GoldenGate. So let us now start and discuss what is classic architecture and what is microservices. I'll give you a brief overview and then we'll discuss about troubleshooting and performance. So as I mentioned, so there are two types of architecture in Oracle GoldenGate. One is classic and second is microservices. So as I told you, when GoldenGate was founded in 1995, it was standalone. It was GoldenGate only. In 2009, it became Oracle GoldenGate. Now, from 2009 to 2017, there was only one way to configure GoldenGate. That was through command prompt, GGSCI. How many of you have heard about GGSCI? Type in the chat window. Okay. I see many of you, almost 70%. Right. So that GGSCI is, until 2017, it was called as, it was the only way to configure GoldenGate. So GGSCI is command prompt based architecture, which allows you to set up, manage, troubleshoot, configure GoldenGate through command prompt. Okay. And it is a traditional way of configuring GoldenGate. Still, if you go out into the market, like 79 to 80% of implementations are still on classic architecture. So classic architecture allows you to set up, manage, troubleshoot, configure GoldenGate through command prompt GGSCI. Okay. Now in 2017, so until 2017, there was only GGSCI. Now from 2017, that is from GoldenGate version 12.3 onwards. Okay. Up till today, 2023, up till GoldenGate version 21C, both classic and microservices exist. So what happened in 2017? A new architecture was launched, which is called as microservices, Oracle GoldenGate microservices. So this GGSCI based architecture is called as classic architecture. Okay. In 2017, Oracle launched a new architecture of GoldenGate, which is called as microservices architecture. So microservices architecture allows you to set up, manage, troubleshoot, configure GoldenGate through GUI and allows for better integration with cloud applications. Okay, so just to give you a brief, like practical part, how GGSCI looks and how microservices looks. So I log into GGSCI. Okay, so this is GGSCI. You see, this is GGSCI prompt. and you have all the processes, whatever processes you configure, all the processes you'll find over here. So this is called as classic architecture, which is command prompt based architecture. Microservices architecture was launched in 2017, which allows you to set up, manage, troubleshoot, configure GoldenGate through GUI. So this is the GUI of Oracle GoldenGate microservices architecture. So you can configure, so you have to log in to GoldenGate prompt. It is a secured environment. So you can configure Oracle GoldenGate processes from here. Like if you have to configure extract, click on plus sign. So you can do GoldenGate configuration from this GUI prompt. So you have two types of architectures as of today, classic and microservices. So as I was mentioning, from 2009 to 2017, that is until 2017, GoldenGate version 12. Until GoldenGate version 12. It was only Oracle GoldenGate classic architecture. From 2017 to up till now, that is GoldenGate version 12.3 to 21c, both classic and microservices coexist. So you can choose which architecture you want to use it for database. Mostly still it's classic architecture which is being used. Microservices architecture from 23 GoldenGate version onwards, which is yet to be launched. It's not launched, but from 23c onwards, OGG version, only MSA will be there. The MSA stands for microservices architecture. So only microservices architecture will be there. So until 21c classic architecture is there. After 21c classic architecture will be deprecated. But remember, it's not de-supported. And another thing you have to keep in mind is still most of the implementations are still on classic architecture. Microservices implementation is pretty less, but Oracle is upgrading or pushing its customers to use microservices aggressively. Like it has planned to upgrade 40 to 50% of implementations by end of 2024 to microservices. So microservices is definitely future of Oracle GoldenGate. Okay. So Oracle GoldenGate classic architecture. Now, how does GoldenGate classic architecture works is you have a source database and a target database. Now, remember the major advantage with GoldenGate is it supports both Oracle as well as non-Oracle databases. So how does GoldenGate captures the data? It captures the data from transaction logs of the database. Transaction logs means where the changes are stored. So those transaction logs in case of Oracle database are called as redo logs or backup of redo logs, which is called as archive logs. Okay. So GoldenGate captures the data from the transaction logs of the database. So remember one thing, GoldenGate captures only committed transactions. It doesn't capture any uncommitted transactions. So one of the major thing you have to keep in mind is GoldenGate is only going to capture and apply committed transaction. No uncommitted transaction will be captured by Oracle GoldenGate. Okay, so what happens is whatever changes happens to the database, those changes gets returned into the transaction logs of the database. Now, once those changes are returned into the transaction logs, GoldenGate capture, which is also called as the extract process, it extracts the changes. So capture process here, if you see on the screen, the capture process is also known as extract process, and you see the delivery process here as well. It is also called as the replicate process. So the capture process captures the data, writes it to local trail on local machine. So these trail files are binary format files which consume space on your operating system, which resides on operating system. So extract process extracts the data, writes it to local trail. Now, once the data becomes available into local trail, the data pump process reads the data from local trail, sends it over TCP/IP network, and writes it to remote trail on target machine. So the replicate process, so the data pump process reads the data. The source of the data pump process is local trail and writes it to remote trail. Once the data becomes available into remote trail, the delivery or replicate process reads the data from remote trail and apply it to target database. So there are three processes involved in this GoldenGate replication: extract, pump, and replicate process. These three processes aid in replicating the data from source to target database. So as soon as the transaction is committed on source database, the extract process captures those, writes it to local trail. The data pump process reads the data from local trail, sends it over TCP/IP network, and writes it to remote trail. Once the data becomes available into remote trail, the replicate process reads the data from remote trail and apply it to target database. So as I mentioned, there are three processes involved in GoldenGate replication: extract, pump, and replicate process. Now GoldenGate supports bidirectional replication. So the major advantage with GoldenGate is it not only supports unidirectional replication, it also supports your bidirectional replication. So bidirectional replication means is whatever transaction, so the application can be connected to both the sites. If it connects to site A, the data will be replicated to site B. Similarly, if the application is connecting to site B, it will be replicated to site A as well. So in opposite directional, in bidirectional environment, what happens is the extract again will be configured on site B, writing data to local trail. Once the data becomes available into local trail, pump process on site B will write the data to remote trail on site A, and then the replicate process on site A will apply the data to the target database site on site A. So basically, bidirectional, I always say one thing: bidirectional is nothing but two-way unidirectional. Remember, each process you see over here, so these are called as processes: extract, pump, and replicate. So each process which you see over here is independent of each other. Each process is independent of each other. So as I mentioned, bidirectional, I always say, is nothing but two-way unidirectional, but there are some considerations which we discussed during the training. Okay. So now GoldenGate microservices architecture. So the component of extract, the classic architecture include, there is one manager process as well. So if you look at, let me show you. So you get these virtual boxes as well with the training. So same virtual boxes which I am working on, you will also get those for training. So you see here, these are the processes configured. Along with that, you also have one manager process which manages the GoldenGate environment. So say, for example, management means manager process, as the name suggests, it manages the GoldenGate environment. So in GoldenGate, so manager process comes by default with the installation. So the components of classic architecture include manager process, capture, pump, trail file, replicate. Along with that, there is one background process which runs over here, which is called as collector process. This is just for your information that there is a collector process runs. Collector process is a background process which runs on the target database. What is the work of collector process? The collector process collects the data which is being sent over TCP/IP network by data pump process. It collects that and helps in writing data to remote trail. But collector is a background process. Okay. Now microservices architecture. So microservices architecture is a new REST API based architecture which enable us to configure, monitor, and manage Oracle GoldenGate services using GUI, web-based UI. Oracle GoldenGate 12c R3 introduces the concept of microservices architecture. So from 12c R3 onward, the microservices has been launched. So in August 2017, Oracle released two architecture. The existing architecture was renamed to classic architecture and the new architecture was microservices architecture. If you have to directly, if you want to upgrade from classic to new microservices, you will have to do a fresh install and migrate to the architecture. So this is how your microservices architecture looks like. So microservices, basically what happens is there are different services which runs. So if I show you the screen of service manager, so you see there are different services which are running, like admin service, administration service we call, admin service we call in like short form. You have distribution service, you have performance metric service and receiver service running in microservices architecture. So all these services are managed under service manager. So first you log into service manager. Service manager manages all the services which are running in your environment, like these services. Now, if you have to configure the GoldenGate process, you click on admin server, log into admin server. And there, if you want to add the extract process, click on plus sign and you can add. Same way, if you want to add the replicate, click on this plus sign and your replicate can be added. So you can add, so just to let you know, before I proceed, this microservices architecture also supports command prompt. Microservices architecture is not everything about GUI. GUI is one of the feature, but apart from that, it also supports command prompt as well. Okay. Now, microservices architecture, if you want to configure, so there are different services running. You can see administration service, distribution service. So in classic architecture, you have got data pump process. The data pump process of classic architecture has been replaced with distribution service in microservices architecture. So in microservices architecture, there is no data pump, it is distribution service. The concept remains same of reading the local trail file and writing to remote trail file, but there is no data pump process involved. It's the distribution service which runs over here. Okay. Then there is receiver server as well. So receiver server is in classic architecture. I told you there is collector process. In classic architecture, you have collector process. In microservices architecture, the collector process of classic architecture has been replaced with receiver server. Receiver server, as the name suggests, it receives the changes which are being sent over TCP/IP network by the distribution service, right? And then from GoldenGate 12.3 onwards, there is one new addition, which is performance metric server. It is also available in classic architecture. I'll show it to you. What does performance metric server mean? So these are the four components of microservices architecture. Along with service manager, you have got these components. So if you have to configure any process, you configure it under admin server, that is administration service. Okay. So microservices architecture, if you see now, under admin server, that is administration. So you have got the administration server. So first you have service manager. Under service manager, all the services run. So under administration server, you can configure extract process, writing data to local trail. Once the data becomes available into local trail, distribution server will send the data over TCP/IP network where it will be received by receiver server. Receiver server will help in writing it to remote trail, and then replicate will apply it to target database. Okay. So you have got admin server, performance metric server, distribution server, and receiver server in microservices architecture. So these are the components. So as I mentioned, The data pump of classic has been replaced with distribution service and microservices. Same with performance metric server. So the classic collector has been replaced with receiver server on target side. Performance metric server is the new addition, which is available in both classic as well as microservices architecture. So this is how login to service manager looks like. Okay. Now it is really very important to know how data flow happens. So for troubleshooting purpose, how data flow happens. Oracle log files are read by extract process capturing any required data for the replication. So first of all, the transaction logs basically are read by the extract process. So Oracle log files are read by the extract process capturing any required data for the replication. Then extract carries out mapping and conversion to the data and then writes it out to the trail files. So after that, what does extract does is, after capturing any required data, whatever data it has to capture, extract carries out any mapping and writes it out to the trail file. So extract process captures the data, writes to local trail. Once the data becomes available into local trail, data pump process reads the data from local trail, sends it over TCP/IP network and writes it to remote trail on target side. So once the data becomes available into remote trail, it writes it to, once the data is captured by the extract, it's write it to local trail and then it writes it to remote trail with help of data pump process. In case of microservices, with help of distribution server. Once the data is written into remote trail, the replicate process reads the data from the remote trail and apply it to target database. So here, extract process captures the data, writes to local trail. Pump process reads the data from local trail, sends it over TCP/IP network and writes it to remote trail. And once the data becomes available into remote trail, the replicate process reads the data from remote trail and apply it to target database. So if you see, there are three processes involved in replication: extract, pump, and replicate process. Each process has a source to read from and a target to write to. So the extract process source is transaction logs and target is local trail. Pump process source is local trail and target is remote trail. The replicate process source is remote trail and target is target database. Okay. If you have any questions anytime, you can post in the chat window and we'll ensure that none of your questions remain unanswered. Okay. So this architecture is really very important in troubleshooting issues. I always say one thing: if you have understood this architecture, 70% of issues, implementations, designing, you can just complete it, and you can just complete by just following the architecture of Oracle GoldenGate. This architecture covers most of the part. So how to troubleshoot now the GoldenGate issues? So common GoldenGate issues. What first of all we need, I have categorized these GoldenGate issues in multiple categories. What are those categories? Process startup issue. So first and foremost issue you may face is process is not starting. Process is facing issue, like when you are trying to start the process, it is not starting due to some reason. So process startup issues. It may not start up due to some typos or any other reason. So process startup issues. Data not getting captured. So the process is starting, but data is not getting captured. That means it's the extract issue. So first of all, we have to understand one thing. we have to understand one thing. There are three processes involved in GoldenGate replication: extract, pump, and replicate processes. There are three processes involved for Oracle GoldenGate replication: extract, pump, and replicate process. So extract process extracts the data, replicate process applies the data, and pump process sends the data over TCP/IP network. Right. So there might be issue at any level. There might be issue at any level. So extract process extracts the data. So see, one thing we have to understand here: the ultimate source for the database is the ultimate source for extract is database transaction logs, right? That is, if we talk about Oracle database, it will be redo logs or archive logs, right? So first of all, we have to ensure that data is getting returned into the transaction logs. If the data is not getting returned into the transaction logs, then GoldenGate cannot capture it at all. Then GoldenGate cannot capture it at all. So first of all, you have to ensure that data is getting captured, data is getting returned into the transaction. Remember one thing: these transaction logs contains committed as well as uncommitted data. There is one misconception or misunderstanding which I have seen among DBAs is transaction logs only contains committed transaction. That's not true. The transaction log contains committed as well as uncommitted transactions. So the extract process extracts the data, writes to local trail. But remember one thing: extract captures only committed transaction. Extract doesn't capture any uncommitted transactions. Okay, it doesn't capture any uncommitted transactions. So first of all, if the data is not getting captured, you have to ensure that the transaction is committed. So this is what it means: data not getting captured and data not getting applied. These are two different things. So each process is individual in Oracle GoldenGate. So data not getting captured means it's the issue at extract side. Data not getting applied means it's an issue at replicate side. So basically extract and pump might have done the issue, might have done their work, but replicate is not able to apply the data to the target database. So you have to find out where the real issue is, whether the issue is at extract or pump or replicate level. Okay. Then data integrity issues could be there. So data integrity issues means whatever you want to replicate, that should be replicated. Suppose there are 10 transactions happening on source database, right? You want to replicate based on your requirement. You want to replicate those 10. That means data integrity should always be maintained in Oracle. If it's not maintained, then it will be an issue. So there might be data integrity issue. That means there are 10 transactions on source, but on target, there are only 5 transactions which are getting applied. Then process running, but not applying the data. That means that processes may be running. The process may be running, but it's not applying the data. So when you do info all in GoldenGate environment, it shows that all the processes are running, but they are not, you are not able to apply the data. So that is one of the issues. Or process is hung or stalled. That means process, you are unable to, the process which you are running, it is hung. The process doesn't move forward. So these are the common issues which you will identify. So one of the major thing what you have to identify is GoldenGate. First of all, what you have to ensure is there should be no typo. So first and foremost thing is the transaction should be committed. If any transaction you are running in your environment which is uncommitted, it won't be replicated in your environment. GoldenGate only applies committed transactions. It doesn't apply any uncommitted transaction. So first and foremost, you have to ensure that the transaction which you are replicating, it should be committed. If the transaction is committed, but it is still not getting replicated, in that case, otherwise, in that case, so the next thing is, even though the transaction is getting committed, but it's not getting applied, then next thing you have to check is there should be no typo in the parameter file. There should be no typo in the parameter file. So no typo means, if you look at the parameter file, view param ext int 19. So you provide the table details over here. So by mistakenly, suppose if you provide, instead of, just to give you an idea, whatever tables needs to be extracted, you provide those details in the parameter file. So suppose you provide the parameter, you in the parameter file, suppose there is a small typo. So suppose you want to replicate the data, you want to capture the data of pdb1.ggtraining1.dpt11, but by mistakenly you write pdb1.ggtraining11.dpt11. So the schema name or table name, if you by mistakenly mention wrong, GoldenGate will not be able to capture it, because the transaction is happening in this table, pdb1.ggtraining1.dpt11 table at database level. But at the GoldenGate level, you are asking to capture the data from ggtraining11.dpt11, which does not exist at all. So this is a typo at GoldenGate level, right? So GoldenGate, so you have to ensure that there should be no typo in your Oracle GoldenGate parameter file. That is the main thing. And these are the major things which happens when you are replicating the data. Okay. Apart from that, let me go to the architecture once again. One more thing you have to see. Each process in this environment is independent of each other. So capture process is independent of pump process is independent of replicate. So pump process can run even if your extract and replicate is down. Your replicate can run even if your extract and pump is down, and same applies to extract process. Each of the process can run even if other two are down. However, for data purpose, each process is dependent on each other. So for data purpose, the pump process is reading data from, so remember one thing, the target of extract and source of pump is same. So the extract process is writing data to local trail, which is subsequently read by pump process. So if extract process doesn't capture and write data to local trail, there is nothing which pump process can write to remote trail. So for pump process to write data to remote trail, you should have something written to local trail. And who writes data to local trail? It's the extract process. So extract process reads the data from the transaction logs, writes to local trail. Pump process reads the data from local trail, writes to remote trail. The replicate process reads the data from remote trail and applies it to target database. So each process is independent of each other, but for data, they are dependent. Okay, so you have to ensure, another important thing what I notice is there is small typo when you provide the local trail and remote trail details. So you have to ensure that whatever the target of local trail, target of extract processes, same should be source for pump process. Whatever the target of pump process, same should be source for the replicate process. Otherwise, the replication will not happen. Okay, so GoldenGate, so these issues which are mentioned over here, most of the issues you can find. Apart from that, there are certain, now suppose if you want to look in, so suppose if I'm running a process, if I do enroll, I see DPINT 19 is abandoned. So how to find why DPINT 19 is abandoned? Do view report DPINT 19. So the report file will tell you what could be the possible reason why it is failing. So if you see here, it gives you the message that connection refused error. Connection refused. TCP/IP error. Retries exceeded. So this means that the pump process is unable to communicate with the target side, and hence it is getting abandoned. Right? So how to know why the process are getting abandoned is, now apart from that, like if the date process is running but not applying, apart from that, the other issue is the process going down. So when the process goes down, how can you identify why the process has gone down? You need to check your report file. So there are multiple places you can check. First is the report file. Second is ggserr.log file. You can check ggserr.log file as well. So at the GoldenGate level, under GoldenGate home, you have got one ggserr.log file. This ggserr.log file is basically GoldenGate error log file. I call it kind of as a alert log file of GoldenGate. So whatever happens in Oracle GoldenGate environment, it gets written over here. So if you see this as well, you can find some useful information. So you see, it lists out the same error, but yeah, you can also see this ggserr.log file. Okay, so you need to identify why, you need to look into these files and see why the processes are down. Okay, so these files will give you the idea. So one of the challenges of solving problems in replication environment is in deciding which component of the environment is root of the problem, whether it is system. So another file which you can see is, one more thing I want to tell you is, another reason why GoldenGate issues comes in your environment is DB issues. So what happens is the GoldenGate environment ultimately connects to the, it ultimately connects to database. So most of the issues, or some of the issues, I should say, not most of the issues, some of the issues in Oracle GoldenGate environments are related to database as well. So that means that if database is having an issue, your GoldenGate will also give you an issue. So you should also review DB alert log file. So these files you should always review: report file, ggserr.log file, and database alert log file, to understand if there is any database issue. Remember, if there are any database issues in your environment, it will impact your Oracle GoldenGate as well. Because we have to understand one thing: for extraction of data and replication of data, GoldenGate uses basically for extraction, the source is database. For replication, the target is database. So if database health is not good, if database is experiencing an issue, subsequently it will impact your GoldenGate as well. So other things you need to look into is database alert log file is well. So we have to identify what is the root cause of the problem. Is it the system or network? There could be network issue as well, because another important thing is data pump process sends the data over TCP IP network, right? So if network is bad, network is not responding, or network bandwidth is not good, the data transfer will be slow as well. So you have to find if it's the network issue. If it's the network issue, fix it. It will resolve, it might resolve the problem. If system or network is not the issue, identify whether it is database or application issue. So monitor the alert log file of database. Whether it is Oracle GoldenGate installation, it could be the Oracle GoldenGate installation issue as well. So monitor the log files at GoldenGate level. A specific Oracle GoldenGate process like extract, pump, or replicate, it could be the issue, or the way GoldenGate is configured. Now, another important thing we get issues is, I always say one thing here. If you spend 80% of time in designing Oracle GoldenGate environment and 20% of time in implementation, trust me, you won't face any issue in your environment. But what I have seen, what people do is they spend 95 to 100% of time in implementation, but only 5% time, maximum 5% time in implementing, designing GoldenGate. Trust me, if you do that, you are inviting trouble. See, the thing is, designing of GoldenGate is really very important. What do I mean by designing is how many processes you want to create. How do you segregate number of processes you want to have in your environment? How would you decide which mount point GoldenGate will reside on? How would you decide how many tables will be part of how many processes? Say, for example, if you want to implement 1,000 tables in your environment, and if you keep them in one process, they are bound to have some issues. So always ensure spend 80% of time in designing and 20% of time in implementation. I assure you, you won't face any issue. So there is a question, what do you mean by designing? So designing means like segregating primary key, foreign key tables or tables without primary key, then identifying critical and non-critical tables in your environment. Then so critical tables means which should be replicated in real time. Non-critical tables means like log tables, history tables, which gets replicated in, say, for example, 1 hour. That's okay as well. So you need to design. And how do you define how many processes you need? Then how do you define how much CPU? So say, for example, you create 10 processes in your environment, but number of CPUs, your system is not capable enough to hold these many processes. So all these things comes as part of designing of Oracle GoldenGate. Okay. So analyzing performance of Oracle GoldenGate. So for performance part, like to understand why the performance of GoldenGate is not adequate or not up to the level. That means performance means lag. That means suppose you want to replicate the data in real time, and you want that the replication should not take 10 seconds, 50 seconds or some time, but your GoldenGate is experiencing huge lag in your environment. So lag means basically the time difference between which a record gets committed on source and it gets applied on target, right? So you want that the replication should be, your replication time is too much. That means once the record gets committed on source database, it takes a lot of time in applying. So why it takes a lot of time? There are 3 processes involved in GoldenGate replication: extract, pump, and replicate. So first of all, you have to determine which component is causing latency or issue. So whether it is extract, pump, or replicate. So if it is extract, identify why it is causing this lag. It could be either it is mining the redo logs, or it could be writing to the trail file. Which component is causing issue? If data pump is an issue, so identify whether it is reading the local trail files or writing data to remote trail file. And if it's the replicate, whether it's the issue at reading the whether it's the issue of reading the trail files or applying the data. So you need to analyze this to understand why there is huge lag in your environment. So the lag is basically in GoldenGate environment, lag comes either at extract. So we have to understand one thing. Again, there are three processes involved in GoldenGate replication: extract, pump, and replicate. So suppose your application team comes and say that the data replication using GoldenGate is very high, or GoldenGate is not replicating the data in real time. So as a GoldenGate administrator, what I see is people make mistake. They start their troubleshooting at replicate side, which is not correct. What you should do is you should start your troubleshooting at extract side. See, the replicate is reading the data from remote trail. Which process is writing data to remote trail? Pump process. Pump process, from where does it read the data from? It reads the data from local trail. Who writes data to local trail? It's the extract. So we have to understand one thing. If extract is experiencing the issue or lag, it will subsequently impact your pump process. If pump is having issues, it will subsequently impact the replicate. So first of all, we should identify whether the lag is at extract. If the lag is at extract side, troubleshoot extract lag. If extract is okay, then move to pump. If pump is experiencing the lag, then troubleshoot the issue. If pump is not experiencing the lag, then move to the replicate side. So we have to identify where exactly the issue is. So for extract, how can we optimize the extract configuration? So following are the recommendations to optimize the extract performance. Oracle recommends using GoldenGate release 12.2 or later. So now the latest version is 21C. So some of the implementations are still on 11G GoldenGate. So it is recommended, like if you upgrade yourself to 19C or 21C GoldenGate, you will see huge difference. So it is recommended that go with latest GoldenGate version. Along with that, there are two types of extract, classic and integrated. So the recommended configuration to choose in your environment is go with integrated extract. Integrated capture enables seamless extraction of more data types, and it is easier to configure as well. There is no additional configuration required for extract to read raw files stored on ASM. So with integrated capture, you don't need to do any extra configuration or separate configuration to read the trail files stored on Oracle OSM. Then integrated extract also ensures that archive logs cannot be deleted from the system because it integrates with the database. So it cannot be deleted from the system until it has been processed by extract process. And design and do table segregation properly. Then data pump configuration. How can you optimize your data pump? The primary function of data pump is to read the trail files created by extract and route data to the target host. So you can use pass-through parameter to increase data pump performance and reduce CPU usage when table names as structures are not altered. So there are certain parameter in data pump which you can use, like TCP buff size and TCP flush bytes. So it defines how much data could be sent from source to target. So two parameters which you can use in your data pump parameter file is TCP buff size and TCP flush bytes. So two RMT host parameter, TCP buff size and TCP flush bytes, are very useful for increasing the buffer size and network packets sent by data pump over network from source to target. This is especially beneficial for high latency network. Okay. Use data pump compression. It is also recommended that you use the data pump compression. So GoldenGate supports all these things if network bandwidth is constrained and when CPU headroom is available. Use data pump compression only if network bandwidth is insufficient and network latency is high. Replicate configuration. So configure integrated replicate. So one of the recommendation is either use integrated replicate, or there is a new replicate or latest replicate which is there, which is parallel replicate. So you can go with parallel integrated replicate. So Oracle recommends using integrated or parallel integrated replicate. It automatically offers parallelism, which automatically increases or decreases the number of threads being used based on current workload and database performance as well. Then there are certain parameters like batch SQL, which you can use in your parameter file. So there is a new replicate, which I was talking about, parallel replicate. It's the new feature started from GoldenGate version 12.3. As per my test, it's 5 times faster than its contemporary Oracle GoldenGate replicates. So if you can choose the latest replicate, if it is supported, like parallel replicate in your environment. Parallel replicate is a new variant of replicate that applies transactions in parallel to improve the performance. Another major thing with this parallel replicate is it takes into account the dependencies between transactions, similar to integrated replicate. The dependency computation, parallelism of the mapping and applies performed outside of the database, so can be offloaded to another server. The transactional integrity is maintained in the process, which is really very important. In addition, parallel replicate supports the parallel apply of large transactions by splitting a large transaction into chunks and applying them in parallel. Now from GoldenGate, another important thing is to monitor the lag. You also have heartbeat table. You should also implement heartbeat table in your environment, which monitors real-time lag. So introduced in GoldenGate release 12.2, there is automatic built-in heartbeat table feature that provides end-to-end replication without having to manually implement your own heartbeat table. After creating the heartbeat table, you can view your lag using gglag database. So it is also recommended. I'll give you one example for this. Let me show it to you first of all, and then you will be able to understand it better. I'll log into GGSCI. If I do lag EXE-INT19, it shows me only the last record lag. Last record lag means lag which was there in the environment when the last transaction happened, right? But what about the transaction which happened yesterday? Suppose the application team comes to you and say that there was some lag yesterday at around 12 p.m. But after 24 hours, it has passed. There is no way with this command you can identify what was the lag a couple of hours before or 24 hours before. You cannot identify. You cannot verify there. To know the historic lag in your environment, there is a table or in feature called as heartbeat table, which has been introduced, which tells you what is the lag in your environment or what is the historical lag in your environment. So suppose if there is a view, let me log in. Okay. What is the pass? Just 1 minute. Let me have a look at the password. PS hyphen. No, this should be the password only. Alter session set container equal to pdb2, select table underscore name from DBA underscore tables. I'm showing you what does heartbeat table do. Where table underscore name like heartbeat person, heartbeat person. So select owner, comma, table underscore name so that I can show you. Okay, so we'll look into this. Oh, this is the view. CHS source GG2. This is the schema. So if I do describe CHS source GG2 dot GG underscore heartbeat. Select star from, for example, CHS. So if you see, this will show you the lag. Right now it's not formatted well, but this can show you like path and what was the lag. Due to time constraint, I'm unable to show you much right now. But it shows you what was the lag at a particular time. Let me do one thing. Let me quickly do. I have a blog written related to it as well. This is the blog written by me. You can just Google K21 heartbeat table blog. You may not find it under my name due to some contractual issues, but it's my blog. So I'll run this. We'll query the view GG lag history now. Copy. I need to do CHS source GG2. CHS source GG2 dot GG underscore lag underscore history. See, so it shows you the lag every minute. So at this particular time, the lag was 8 seconds. At this particular time, 12:43, the lag was 9 seconds. At this particular time, the lag was 9 seconds. So it shows you the historical lag. So if any time the lag increases, so whatever time they complain for, you can quickly select this table, check the data in this table to verify their claim, right? Then there is performance metric server. So these are the performance evaluation triptychs you can implement in your environment. Implement performance metric server. So from GoldenGate version 12.3 onwards, GoldenGate launched performance metric server in both classic and microservices. This is huge addition to core product. So if you have to see the performance metric server, this is how it looks like in classic architecture. So in classic architecture, it shows you what is the status of the process. You can monitor any GoldenGate environment over the network. In microservices, the performance metric server looks like this. You can monitor it graphically as well. Like here, it will show you all the processes. Then if you want to monitor any particular process or any environment, you can monitor it like this as well. So performance metric server is a huge addition to Oracle GoldenGate environment, which allows end users to monitor their Oracle GoldenGate environment in real time. This is how it looks like in classic architecture. So following pieces of information are necessary for Oracle GoldenGate performance analysis, like latency or lag time for each process, extract, pump, replicate, then Oracle GoldenGate report files. Then you should take out the AWR and ASH database reports, then CPU and IO data. And then you can also run the health check report as well. So in GoldenGate, you can also take out the health check report and monitor that health check report to monitor your GoldenGate environment. Okay, so these are the logs and report files you can look into, like GoldenGate error log file, GoldenGate report files, and database alert.log as well. Then you should also run your health check, as I mentioned, at the GoldenGate level. For database and session performance, you can monitor your AWR and ESH report. These are the capture views which you can use to monitor or see any performance related issues are there or no in your environment, like DBA capture, GoldenGate capture, then log minus session, log minus stats, etc. These are the commands, GGSC command, which you can use, like info extract, show ch debug for debug purpose. For checking the status, you can check status. Then log stats, then cache manager, cache stats as well. Okay. So yeah, this is about, due to time constraint, like I was unable to show you much, but during the training, I cover everything in detail and each and every topic is discussed over there.